Hello, my name is Mordarim, Warhammer Chaos Gate just released, and I'm here to bring you a few tips and tricks to make your journey more enjoyable. So, let's get right into it. Tip number 1. Aggressive play is key and your Grey Knight doesn't miss. Enemies are trapped in a room with you, a walking tank. But rushing in recklessly is not always the best option. Be methodical. Pick your enemies apart and overwhelm them with a plan in mind. Waiting for foes to swarm into a narrow corridor to trigger overwatch attacks is an option, but letting them run into your flamethrower is much more like a Grey Knight fights. Tip number 2. Use your environment, especially early on. Grenades and blasts can push enemies into pits, killing them instantly. Shooting energy cells, fuel tanks or ammo depots explodes them, ripping your foes into pieces. And you can also damage pillars and statues to make them fall over and crush filth underneath them. Tip number 3. Half cover reduces the damage foes and you receive, and full cover prevents some traditional weapons from dealing damage altogether. Tip number 4. Normal health bars are green and change to red when targeted. This shows you how much damage you deal. The yellow part for the health bar is the potential damage when dealing a critical strike. Tip number 5. Speaking of critical strikes, melee attacks trigger precision strikes whenever you crit, letting you target specific parts of your enemy for additional benefits, like stunning them or chopping their arms off to disable their range capabilities. Tip number 6. Each enemy has a number above their nameplate skull. This number indicates how many hits it needs to receive before getting stunned. Stunning targets is like guard breaking them in other games, and this enables precision strikes without the need to critically strike. It also gives you the option to execute foes. Doing this refreshes 1 AP to all your marines. Tip number 7. Targeting specific squares shows you which enemies you can attack with a faint blue line, and you can also map specific routes for walking around dangerous areas. Tip number 8. Reposition before engaging the next group of enemies. You fully restore your action points for all your walking tanks whenever you notice new enemies without being in combat. Tip number 9. Using psychic abilities or ending your turn fills the blue meter by a certain amount. Rising the meter to 100% triggers an event that can range from debuffing your knights to spawning more enemies. To minimize the risk, use your mind abilities after reaching 100% or a percentage that would trigger the bloom anyway. This will not increase the meter any further and it will reset it to 0% next round. Tip number 10. Teleportation abilities are exceptionally good in this game. Not having to plan around hazards and overwatch attacks while getting right next to enemies in an instant to decimate them is just incredible. Tip number 11. All this will lead to your knights getting injured. Getting down inflicts a critical wound and getting down the second time kills your tank on legs permanently. To avoid this, you can either recover wounds in base in exchange for multiple days worth of time, or heal up right before the departure to base. Medic scars are really good for this. They should be used to top off your knights right before the end of a mission to keep them battle ready. Tip number 12. Another way to keep everyone safe is through overwhelming firepower. For this you need research and equipment upgrades obtained in exchange for seeds. You can gather seeds in melee range scattered throughout the maps, but you can also take them from enemies. To do this you need an interceptor with a lot of crit or someone with a skull that can do this. Seeds are invaluable and you should always have one capable of gathering them on your team. Tip number 13. Speaking of consumables, use them whenever you can. Those replenish every mission and offer you some insane firepower. Tip number 14. Sometimes you cannot avoid getting injured, but that's not a big problem. Having spare knights in your barracks lets you keep wounded ones in base to recover while still being ready for battle. If you balance aggressive play and defensive maneuvers, you should be able to handle the game with 6 to 8 Grey Knights. Tip number 15. Research offers you a lot of great perks, but there are also some that are better than others. Bloom Suppression to decrease the bloom per turn, or Gate of Infinity to enable a stratagem to teleport all your knights to a certain targeted region without restrictions are just 2 of them. Both of them are S tier in high difficulties in later missions, but they are also very useful during early levels. Tip number 16. After finishing a mission, you are greeted with rewards. To unlock all, you need to put points into requisition. This can only be done when reporting to the Grandmaster. So, put at least 2 points in each type to ensure that you can receive all types of equipment and get new recruits. Your first 3 unlocks are best spent on additional recruits, armor and war gear. Tip number 17. Requisition is one of the more common resources, but you are probably lacking a bit in that regard. Unlocking rewards after you finish a mission uses up some of your hard-earned currency and blocks you from upgrading your reward pool when speaking to the Grandmaster. Only pick what you deem useful, otherwise you won't be able to obtain higher tier items. Tip number 18. Tier 1 items are great early on but drop off very fast. You are better off saving up acquisition to unlock higher tiers as early as possible. Tip number 19. Another quick one, you can press right click in menus to get back to the previous screen. There is no need to press the back button. Tip number 20. You can heavily customize a squad. Looking cool while jumping into battle is the most important thing. You will also pop more compared to the background and it makes it easier to not lose your marines in battle. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe for more previews, reviews and guides. See you next time and bye!